Everyone, Matrix on 3 coming at you with a United in Stormwind card review. For this review, I'm going to primarily be focusing on the impact to the standard meta as it is now. There are a couple of cards here and there that I'll talk about in Wild, but not too much. It's mostly for a standard review, which is the game mode I play the most. So, that being said, I want to go over the ratings that we're going to have for these cards before we actually jump into it. Instead of doing a standard 1 to 5, I'd like to give a little bit more of an explanation on why the cards are as strong or weak as I think they are. So to start off our rating system, we have filler cards, or fun cards, but filler. These are cards that are understated or not very good. Even as a budget player, you're going to want to avoid these type of cards. It's not something that you're really going to want to put in your deck. It's better to just look the other way. Next up is a budget or tech card. These are cards that are either good in very specific scenarios, so they'll only be cycling in and out of decks as they are needed by the meta, things like Acidic Swamp Ooze in the case of tech, or a understated card that isn't bad, but is just outshined by some cards that are maybe higher rarity or higher power level, so they fill into that budget category of like, yes, you could run this, but I suggest you find something better. Next up is just average good cards. Cards are very strong, good stats, and they will find homes in decent amount of decks. Something that you would like to run, but that you could definitely take out and replace with something else and still be okay. So an average type of power level. Above that, we have our staple cards. Now these cards are super powerful, and they are cards that you absolutely do not want to play without. If you're running a certain deck like Rush Warrior or something like a Samuro that you would absolutely want in the deck, cards are very, very powerful and will impact the meta in a large way. A little bit above staple, I have build around cards. Now, these cards are usually like legendaries or things that are so powerful you literally have to build your deck around them, or you want to build your deck around them because it'll help you actually win games. These are like win condition cards, cards that have insane power levels, just absolute monsters. And then, as a little add on to our rating, I will be including like current sleeper or like future potential cards. So these are cards that are very strong. They just don't have enough support right now, or there's something that could come along and break these cards. So maybe they're like a budget choice for now, but in the future they could be a build around behemoth. And until that happens, don't disenchant them as long as you can afford it. Just sleep on them for now and see how things pan out. But with that being said, guys, let's jump right into these reviews with Demon Hunter. So the first card we're going to be reviewing, most likely in every class, is going to be that card's quest. In the case of Demon Hunter, we have Final Showdown. You draw 4 cards in a turn, and your reward is those 4 cards all receive a 1 mana discount. Now it goes into the next stage of the quest, which is Gain Momentum. Drawing 5 cards in a turn will reward you with another 1 mana discount on those 5. And then finally, Close the Portal. Draw 5 more cards, and you're rewarded with Demon Slayer Kurtrus. So, Demon Slayer Kurtrus is a 5 mana 7/7 battle cry. For the rest of the game, cards you draw cost 2 less. For this quest, the way I see it right now, you're just drawing too many cards to complete it. So, the rewards for step 1 and 2 are fantastic. Discounting all the cards you draw are great. The only issue with that is how you're going to complete this. So if you're going to put this into a deck with soul shards, while yes, the soul shards do help you complete the quest, receiving a 1 mana discount on soul shards does nothing for you. It's just a waste of a quest reward. And drawing a total of 14 cards in order to complete the quest, even if you are gliding cards back into your deck and drawing 4, making your deck a little bit thicker by putting cards back in, even in that scenario, I don't think this quest is good enough to propel a deck forward. And of the 2 existing Demon Hunter archetypes of Death Rattle and OTK, the deck that would benefit from this the most is OTK Demon Hunter, but as of right now, the deck is already drawing all the cards it needs and discounting them very efficiently. So I don't know if it wants to start a card down by playing the quest, only to receive little bits of discounts here and there. And for that reason, I'm putting this in as a filler or budget option. It's a budget card because you can make a tier 2 or 3 mid-range deck with this and do okay. So we're going to put it in as budget. Next card up in the list is Metamorphin. It is a 1 mana 1/2 taunt, which is good stats for a 1 drop. With the battle cry, if you've cast a fell spell this turn, gain +2/+2. So it basically becomes a 3 drop at that point, a 3/4. This card is strong, however, I have it in as a budget because, again, the only decks that you're playing don't want this on 1. If you're playing Death Rattle, you'd much rather be equipping a Tusk Piercer. If you're playing OTK, you're not playing a 1 drop minion. And if you're playing mid range, you probably still want the 1/2 that gains attack every time you swing rather than a 3/4. So it's a budget option. It's definitely a whole pile of stats if you manage to squeeze a fell spell in it with it on the same turn. Next we have Sigil of Alacrity. 1 mana at the start of your next turn, draw a card, and it costs 1 less. This card's good. I think it'll find home in a couple different decks. Most likely OTK Demon Hunter would be able to play this. It's a good 39th to 40th card, something that you just need to round a deck out. It draws you a card, you pay the 1 mana up front, it discounts the mana on the back end when you draw the card next turn. It's just a cycle card, it's nothing amazing. You could definitely cut it from decks that play it, but it is good. If Demon Hunter Quest ever does become good enough to be a tier 1, this card will most likely make it into that deck as well. But for now, it's just a good card, something you could definitely play, but we can cut it if we need to. Next up, Fell Barrage. Deal 2 damage to the lowest health enemy twice, and it is a fell spell. So the verdict on this, if you will, right now is that it should be doing 2 damage, potentially to 2 separate targets. So if there's a 2/2 and face, it'll kill the 2/2, then go face. There's a potential that it would just do 2 to the 2/2 twice, and you'd waste the other 2 damage. We're not sure. I'm going off the assumption that it will split, and even with that split, which makes it better, it's a good card. It's not a staple. It won't see play in every deck, but I can see it finding a home. Probably not in Death Rattle Demon Hunter, but maybe in OTK. It's a little bit of a good clear and just all around good. Next up, we have Chaos Leech. 3 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion. Outcast, deal 5 instead. This one I have down as a budget card. It's okay. I just can't help seeing it as an inferior I-Beam in like every single way. I-Beam being outcast and only costing 1 to deal 3 just seems better than dealing 5. The only thing that would really change this card's power level is if there's some 5 health minion that Demon Hunter just has to kill on turn 3, and they'd be playing this, and even in that scenario, you're most likely behind, so I don't have to see this as anything other than just a budget choice. Next up, we have Lion's Frenzy. So this card is supposed to support the quest, which is a 0/2 weapon that has attack equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Theoretically, could be a million attack, right? You draw 50 million soul shards, or you do a couple of glides and draw spells, you could hit for big damage. Now, the issue I see with this card is Soul Shard Demon Hunter did a very similar thing, having the 4 attack weapon up, playing the 5/5, slamming face for 9, and that deck is not seeing play anymore because it's just not good enough to get there. I see the same exact issue with this card. It's a 3 mana 1/2 weapon by default unless you're drawing more cards with it, and this thing could have a million attack, but it doesn't mean anything if you're walled behind a taunt. And also, especially in the quest deck, basically passing 1 to cast the quest, doing whatever you're going to do on 2, into essentially passing on 3 does not seem like where you want to be in a competitive deck. So I have this down as like a budget card. If you need maybe a decent weapon, you can kind of squeeze it in, but this is very borderline filler unless the quest really pops off. Next up, we have Fellgorger. 4 mana, 4/3 demon with Battlecry, draw a fell spell, and reduces cost by 2. So the interesting thing about this card is you can build around specifically him, or you can build around him and the legendary Jace, which we will talk about later, where if you're teching your deck specifically for the Fellgorger, you could draw things like Chaos Strike, and he becomes a 4 mana, 4/3 gain to attack draw card, which is insane. Or draw like a Fury, which just gains you attack. It's okay. We have the Fell Barrage that we spoke about earlier, which does 2 and 2. He definitely has some very, very good targets that he could be hitting. Now, the only issue I see with him right now is the 2 prominent Demon Hunter decks do not want him, because you want to be discounting Moargs as your demon in OTK, and you want to be reviving 8/8 as your demon in Death Rattle, or you would rather be playing a 4 mana Death Rattle. For that reason, I have him as just good for now. Very good card. More support comes out for him, the better he'll get. He's also kind of a sleeper because eventually we might be able to find a really solid mid range or aggressive type deck that utilizes both him and Jace. Next up, we have Persistent Peddler. I think that this is going to wind up being a staple card, and this is me going out on a limb here, but I really like it. It's a 4 mana 4/3 Death Rattle. Summon a Persistent Peddler from your deck. And this has a couple of pretty good applications. As a 4 mana 4/3, not fantastic. It's really 3 drops worth of stats. But the fact that it's tradable, I feel is very good. You can pull this off of your 3/3 Death Rattle that summons a 4-drop Death Rattle from your hand, so it gives you more 4s that you could be potentially playing into a board. It can also be pulled off of your big 7-drop, your Death Speaker, which is something that you would want to do as well. And its Death Rattle, which summons a second copy of itself, will always be live because you can just trade this card away if you ever happen to draw the second one. So it's basically a 1 mana draw card with Death Rattle upside in the Death Rattle deck. I think it will wind up becoming a staple and find its way in there. Unless Persistent Performer, the Performer card just really sticks very, very hard and there's no room for it. But this is going to be my adventurous guess. I'm going to say staple. Next we have Ironbound Brute. He is a 7 mana 6/7 taunt that costs 1 less for each card drawn this turn. So no matter what, it is a 6 mana 6/7 taunt. I have this down as a budget card as well. Basically, every card that supports the quest is just budget. Quest is going to be like tier 2, 3, as far as I can tell. And this Brute, while very good, isn't enough of a payoff to make the quest strong. And for that reason, I don't think he's going to see that much play either. 6 mana 6/7 taunt is just fair. If you manage to discount him, that's great, but I don't know what deck you could realistically cut a card to put him in. So I'm just going to put him down as a budget option. Maybe you need a big guy and you just don't own anything else. And next up, we have Jace, the Dark Weaver. An 8 mana 7/5 battle cry. Cast all fell spells that you've cast this game, and they target enemies if possible. So I looked at the selection of fell spells available, and there's only a select few you really want. So like Fury is one of them, Chaos Strike, the new one from this set that deals the 2 damage. There's a couple of like eye beams, things like that. So he's definitely 8 mana, clear your opponent's board, do some face damage, which is phenomenal. But the best Demon Hunter deck right now doesn't play that many spells. And OTK Demon Hunter does not want to play him. I think for now, it's a budget card if you want to make a budget mid-range with that 4-drop and some fell spells. But he is the first sleeper of this set. This card can become absolutely insane if the right fell spells or conditions come out. It's possible that he could be winning you the game if your mid-range aggro does enough, and then he doubles the damage. The one thing I think that's really holding him back right now is the fact that for your maximum damage output, you would want to play rank 3 Fury, which means you would have already had to have gotten a turn 10 and play those, because I'm pretty sure if you play rank 1 or 2, he's going to recast Fury at that rank. It's not going to take into account what mana you're at. I could be wrong with that, though. But definitely something to keep your eye on. He's very interesting. I just don't think he has a home for right now. Alright, next up we have Druid with Lost in the Park. This has one of my favorite quest rewards of the entire set, not because it's good, just because the flavor is fantastic. So the quest line, you start, gain 4 attack with your hero, and you get 5 armor. Second step, defend the squirrels. You gain 5 attack and gain 5 armor again, but this time you also draw a card, so your quest replaces itself. And then finally, Feral Frenzy, spelled friend. Gain quest line, gain 6 attack with your hero, and your reward is Guff the Tough, a 5 mana 8/8 taunt with Battle Cry. Gain your hero 8 attack this turn and 8 armor. So, as much as I love Guff the Tough because it's one of the most fun things to say in this expansion, unfortunately, this is a filler card as well. It's just not good enough. There's nothing in the set that really makes me think like, yes, I'm gaining enough attack to be an aggro mid-range druid. They're just more powerful things to be doing in druid right now. Ramping and playing clowns, ramping and playing Anacondra and then going absolutely nuts, playing tokens. There are just so many different strategies that are going to unfortunately outshine Guff. I don't think this will be good enough, unfortunately. Next up, we have Sow the Soil. It is choose one, give your minions +1 attack, or summon a 2/2 Treant. So this card I think is good. It's powerful because it does give you the option to summon a 2/2 on 1, which is fantastic stats, or give all your minions +1 attack, which could potentially close out a game. So I think this will find a home in token decks, but I don't think it's a staple, so just good. Next we have Vibrant Squirrel, a 1 mana 2/1 Death Rattle. Shuffle 4 acorns into your deck. When drawn, summon a 2/1 squirrel. And then they have the acorn, and they have the Satisfied Squirrel token. So this card, I'm going to say, is a staple. And it's only a staple in token druid decks. If there's a token druid deck this format, this card will be why there's that deck. Gibberling got a huge nerf, and the deck immediately fell off the face of the earth. I think Vibrant Squirrel with a good mix of spells could be good for tokens going forward. And there's a lot of nice nature spells that works with this and the original Guff, which buffs your minions. So I think we may see a shift in token decks towards that style. Next up, we have Composting, the card that makes me think it will make Token Druid a deck. This is absolutely a staple. Give your minions Death Rattle, draw a card. This card is nuts. Just the only thing that's stopping this deck from being absolutely insane is Priest, because of course it is. Priest won't let you have fun ever. That being said, this card's just insane. 2 mana, draw X amount of cards depending on how many spells you've played, or rather how many minions you had in play. I'm thinking spells because Glow 5 Swarm. It should be very, very powerful. Absolute staple. Next up we have Wicker Claw. After your hero gains attack, this minion gains +2 attack. A 2 mana 1/4. I did get to see a little bit of this on the Theorycraft stream. It does snowball very fast, but it is a budget card because it is part of the filler quest, which is unfortunate. I don't see it having enough support right now. It's just, it needs more friends. It needs more things to make it really, really strong. There's just no mid-range druid that's going to compete when it's being outshined by all these more powerful things. Next up is Oracle of Elune. Originally, I didn't really think too much of this card, but the more I read it and look at the things that are available, the more I like it. I'm going to put it down as good. I don't think it's broken yet. This will most likely find a home in Token Druid because we are trying to play more actual minion cards. And I can see this maybe making a crazy combo one day with Celestial Alignment, because everything costs 1, so it'll be able to copy big guys for basically really, really cheap and or free. That being said, I still think it needs just a little bit more to really push it to be crazy. Right now you want to take advantage of like a Noyotron, so you get 2 taunts, or you maybe want to do Watchtower, so you can make your opponent's cards cost 2, or like Loot Hoarder. But in a token style deck, it's got really, really good health. Obviously a little bit low on attack. 4 health's pretty decent. It might be able to stick around and get you some advantage, so I'm going to put it as a good card. Next up, Kodo Mount. Give a minion +4/+2 in Rush. When it dies, summon a Kodo. It's not a bad spell, so I have it down as budget right now, because I just don't think this finds a home. This is in that Phantom mid-range druid that I just do not think is going to happen right now, and we're most likely going to be in the 3 types I spoke about. Definitely not a bad card by any means, but it's just budget for this format. Next up is Park Panther. Rush, whenever this attacks, give your hero +3 attack this turn. I think people are sleeping on this card. I had it in between like good and a staple. I think for most decks it's just good. But where I could see this really shining is in Anacondra Druid. So you can, on turn 2, play Sow the Seeds to draw this as a 3-drop. Slam it on 3, clear 2 of your opponent's minions, and set up a clear board for turn 4 Overgrowth, which is what you want to be doing. You want to be overgrowthing and gaining mana. I think it's fantastic. Rush itself, +3 attack on your minion, means you should be able to clear any 2 smaller minions at around turn 4, and it should do pretty decent. So I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say staple in Anacondra Druid. Next up, Best in Shell. 6 mana, summon 2/7 turtles with taunt. And tradable. So for 1 mana, we can get rid of this and hopefully never see it again. No, just kidding. But it's a good card. It may find its way into things like Clown Druid with the Guardian Animals because you want to Overgrowth. Then you have 7 mana, you need to do something. Maybe Best in Shell fills a gap if you don't have Innervate or Lightning Bloom to help keep you alive. I definitely think it's a good card. It's just not a staple. And then finally for Druid, we have Sheldras Moontree. Battlecry. The next 3 spells you draw are cast when drawn. As of right now, this is a budget card, but it is our second sleeper of the set, which seems to be a theme with these legendaries, unfortunately. So he is very good. The only issue is you want this to be targeted. You don't want to just play any spell, cast when drawn, because, what if you draw like an Acorn, it's already cast when drawn. You want something nutty to go off of this. Right now, the only big spells we really have are Cenarian Ward and, Survival of the Fittest. And the reason you're playing Survival of the Fittest is to corrupt your clowns. So you don't want him casting it, because it will not corrupt your clowns as far as I'm aware. If it does, maybe it'll find a home. The only thing I could really think with this is you can play him. The next turn you could play the Primordial Protector to force draw your Survival and he'll cast it. Or you can play him, then Warkeeper Polkelt to go Survival into like a Cenarian Ward, which would be insane. But that's a whole different type of deck, and I'd rather just be playing Clown Druid instead of him. So he's budget, but a sleeper. Keep your eye on him. He might do some good things in the future. All right, next up is Hunter. So we're going to skip and go to the Hunter quest, which is Defend the Dwarven District, which is quest line. Deal 2 damage with 2 spells. Reward, your hero power can target minions. Then you get Take the High Ground. Same conditions. Deal 2 damage with 2 different spells. Reward, set the cost of your hero power to 0, which seems super healthy in Hunter. Then you have Knock 'em Down, which is what you'll be doing with that hero power. Deal damage with 2 more spells. And then you get Tavish, the Master Marksman. And Tavish is Battlecry. For the rest of the game, spells you cast refresh your hero power. So they made Raza Hunter. Hunter gets to cosplay as Priest, and this card just seems nutty. Dealing 6 damage, or rather playing 6 damage spells, is something you're most likely doing in Hunter anyway, and then having spells to refresh your hero power does not seem hard. So this seems like it's going to be a very powerful deck. I would say that this will be tier 1. I'm not looking forward to having my Hunter opponent just press button on my face 2 to 3 times a turn and I die, but this is what I'm going to be looking forward to. I'll most likely be playing this myself, especially since we have things that either generate more spells or you can play Lock and Load into Resizing Pouch into a 0 mana spell, and the 0 mana spell will refresh your hero power again, and it'll be good. We'll definitely have to find the right build, but it is going to be good. So I have this down as a build around the first one on the set, really, of the quest. This is a amazing quest. I think it's going to be phenomenal. Next up, we have Devouring Swarm. 0 mana. Choose an enemy minion. Your minions attack it, and then return any that die to your hand. I'm going to go out and say that this is going to be a staple. There are a lot of cards that you want to get back in your hand and play again. So, like, you play Wolpertinger, and it summons a copy of itself. Your opponent plays some thick taunt. You can swarm it. The Wolpertingers die, and then you can play them both out. Now you have 4 Wolpertingers. It seems really good. It might not be as good as I'm thinking it is, but you have a bunch of 1/1 rush minions, Kolkar pack runners, you have the Wolpertingers. You could play the Elgwyn Boars, but obviously I don't think that that's something you're really looking to do. I think this will be good. You may not wind up playing it staple, but it'll be a card you're happy to see discovered, and I'm going to say it's a staple in aggro for sure. Next up we have Leatherworking Kit. 2 mana, 0/3 weapon. After 3 friendly beasts die, draw a beast and give it +1/+1, then lose 1 durability. Now, while this is very easy to trigger off of your 1/1s from Kolkar Packrunner or Wolpertingers and things like that, I don't see it being that good. This is more like a budget card. On 2 mana for aggressive hunter decks, you're really looking to play Kolkar Pack Runner. You're not looking to equip a 0/3 weapon and pass. You have other ways to draw beasts and give them buffs with the 4 mana card that discovers a beast. That's better. 2 mana draw beast, give it +2/+2. That's better. Scavenger's Ingenuity. Like, there's just better cards to play than this. So this is just a budget option if you don't have those other ones. Next up, we have Aimed Shot, which is quest support. Not that it needed it. It's 3 damage to any target of your choice. Your next hero power deals 2 more damage. This is a staple. It's 5 damage for 3 mana, more or less, maybe 5 mana, which is fine. 5 damage for 3 mana is comparable to like a fireball, 4 mana for 6 damage. And it's not 2 more damage this turn, it's just 2 more damage, period. So your next hero power is shooting for 4. I think this is going to see play everywhere. In aggro decks, in hero power decks. The only thing that may prevent this from seeing as much play as I think it should is this will block your Olgra's Wife off of your 5-drop, but that's about it. And even then, I don't think I mind not drawing the second half of Mankrik just to be able to do 5. Like, I don't think I mind too much because Aim Shot just seems so good. But this is definitely going into the quest deck, and that deck is going to be insane. Next up, we have Ramming Mount. It's 3 mana, give a minion +2/+2 and immune while attacking. When it dies, summon a Ram, which is Tavish's Ram, a 2 mana 2/2 that is also immune while attacking. I think that this will also be a staple card. It's a card you're going to want in almost every hunter deck. It lets you trade and keep board, and then when they clear it, they have to kill the Ram as well because it will also help you trade. One of the things that makes Face Hunter lose is when you're playing something like Rush Warrior and they take board and then you don't have a way to take it back. This doesn't exactly solve the problem, but it definitely helps alleviate the pain, so I think this will be a card that will find home in most decks. Next up, we have Stormwind Piper. After this minion attacks, give your beast +1/+1. This is a filler card. Unfortunately, there's no hunter deck that I can think of where you're comfortable playing a 3 mana 1/6 and passing the turn. You don't want it. It doesn't have immediate impact on board. It could buff your beast, but at that point you're probably winning already, so it's filler. Next up, Rodent Nest. Death Rattle, summon 5 1/1 rats, and it's a 4 mana 2/2. This I have as a budget card. It's part of the Rat King type of thing. I just don't think it's good enough. 4 mana for a 2/2 is not great. There's no way to cheat it out that I know of. And summoning 5 1/1s is also okay. It's no token druid, so I think this is a budget pick at best. Then next we have the Imported Tarantula. It's a tradable Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1 spiders with Poisonous and Rush. The tradable is interesting. The Death Rattle is kind of cool. The only thing that this really does is give Hunter a somewhat reason to play Guardian Animals, but it's just not good enough. If you're playing Guardian Animals, you want to play Druid. This is like a filler card right now. There's nothing that you really want to jam this into, even with the tradable, so filler for sure. And then we have the Rat King, 5 mana, 5/5 Rush, Death Rattle, go dormant. Revive after 5 friendly minions die. So I'm going to put this down as a good card. I don't know if it's necessarily going to find a home right now. Aggro Hunter doesn't want this because you're just going to play Rhino as a better 5-drop that pushes damage, and you're not really trying to have your 1/1s die and revive a 5/5 for Rush. You're not looking for board presence. The quest doesn't want it. It's just not a bad card per se, so I'll put it down as good with a sleeper tag. You definitely want to keep your eye on this in case we do get cards that support it. And finally, we have Rats of Extraordinary Size. 6 mana, summon 7 1/1 rats. Any that can't fit on the battlefield go into your hand with +4/+4. This card is just a filler card for now. 6 mana, 7 1/1s. Again, we're not Token Druid. We're not buffing these things. They're just on the board. Yes, it supports Rat King, but why am I playing all these cards to support a Rush minion when I could be going face with the quest? Next class. All right, next class we have Mage, and again, starting off with their quest, Sorcerer's Gambit. The first step is you cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Sounds super easy. Reward, draw a spell. Then you have Stall for Time. Cast a Fire, Frost, and Arcane spell. Reward, discover 1. Then reach for the Portal Room, the final part of the quest. Do it again, and your reward is Arcanist Dawngrasp, who is basically a Malygos for the rest of the game. 5 mana, Battlecry for the rest of the game. You have spell damage plus 3. This card is filler. Fire spells got a huge boost in this set. Arcane spells are already good, and Frost spells are awful. You don't want to play Frost spells right now. The best one is an 8-drop, and you don't want to play that. So, it's just too much. It's 9 spells to get a Malygos-ish effect, and then what spells am I going to be using with this plus 3 damage after I've already cast 9? Or even if you count it as 8, because the second step lets you discover 1, that's still a lot of spells. And it's 3 Frost spells, which are just not great right now. This could become a little bit better if more Frost spells come out, but even then, it would only bump up to a budget, because if you just want spell damage for the rest of the game, you could just play the 5 mana 2/2 that when it dies, passes the 2 spell damage onto the other minions. 5 mana 5/5. Sorry, that passes the 2 damage onto the next minion. You don't have to play a quest for this, so yeah, definitely filler. Alright, so next up we have Hot Streak. Your next fire spell this turn costs 2 less. It's a targeted innervate. And for 0 mana, that's pretty good. I think it's just a good card. There's no fire spell that I'm like really itching to cheat out. There could be a deck that draws sufficiently enough where you may want to innervate some fire spells out. So I don't think it's bad by any means. It's just not a staple. Next card is First Flame. 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion, add a second flame to your hand, and the second flame is also 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion. I think this card is going to be a staple. It fits into every mage. Spell damage mage wants it, quest mage wants it, and then also minionless mage wants it. Everything wants this card. It clears minions super efficiently. It gives you 2 fire spells. Very, very good card. I think this is going to be a staple for sure. Next up, we have Celestial Ink Set. 2 mana weapon, 0/2. After you spend 5 mana on spells, reduce the cost of a spell in your hand by 5 and lose 1 durability. This is a good card, but for the current set and standard meta, it's a filler. But I will say it's a sleeper because the only thing that's holding this back is any good costly spell. You can play a 5-drop spell, play a 5 for free, play a bunch of spells, play an 8-drop spell for 3 mana. There's just not enough high-cost spells to really make me want to play this, even in something like Minionless Mage or All-Spell Mage. So, filler, avoid it for now, but keep it in the back of your mind, because this could definitely wind up being broken. All right, next up, we have Ignite. 2 mana, deal 2 damage, shuffle and Ignite into your deck. That deals 1 more damage. So as far as I can tell, this is infinite. It will shuffle a 3 damage Ignite, which should shuffle a 4 damage Ignite, or another 3 damage Ignite. But it's shuffling a copy of itself into your deck. It's infinite damage. And for that reason, I think it will be a staple. Card is really good. 2 mana deal 2 is great. 2 mana deal 3 is better. And even if it stays as that, that's good enough for Spell Mage. Definitely good enough for Spell Damage Mage, because you can also add your spell damage to it. I think this card will for sure see play. Next up, Prester's Pyromancer. 2 mana, 2/3, Battlecry. Your next fire spell has spell damage plus 2. This card will also be a staple. The fire spell mage support looks phenomenal this set. Once again, this is your next fire spell, not your next spell this turn, which means it'll just be floating until you use it. Good with Ignite, good with the 1 mana removal. It's good with the board clears coming up. This card's just good. 2 mana, 2/3. Fantastic. I want it in my mage deck right now. Next up, we have Fire Sale. 4 mana, tradable, deal 3 damage to all minions. For a board clear, 4 mana, deal 3 is pretty much right on the mark. The fact that we can buff it to 5 or cheat it out for 2 mana as well, it makes it really, really good. I think Fire is going to be a force to be reckoned with, especially with their legendary. So because of that, I put that as a staple in every deck. Even if it's a one-of, it's a tradable card. If you're playing Spell Mage, you're playing against a control deck, you don't need it, you just ship it back. Draw a card. It's phenomenal. Next, we have Sanctum Chandler. After you cast a fire spell, draw a spell. Any spell. It's pretty good. It's a little understated for 5, but that's because it has that draw effect attached to it. I have it as borderline staple, but I'm going to say that it's good. 5 mana may be a bit too much. There's definitely some combo potential with the Innervate and then any other fire spell being able to be played in the same turn as him, drawing you 2 cards, and, dishing out some punishment. I'd keep on the lookout for this. Definitely a good card, just maybe not staple status. Next up, we have Clumsy Courier. I have this as a filler spot right now. Card is very good in Wild. Well, maybe not very, but it is good in Wild. There are a lot of really high cost spells that you would like to cheat out. Right now, Dragon Caller is doing a little bit of a better job at doing that. This can be good. It's a bit of a sleeper. It just needs some cards to support it in Standard. Right now, there's really only 8 mana spells, and I'm not trying to cheat out an 8 mana spell with a 7 mana card, so it's filler for now. Next up, we have Grand Magus Antonidas. Antonidas is back with a retrain, and he is furious. So he's an 8 mana 6/6 battle cry. If you've cast a fire spell on each of your last 3 turns, cast 3 fireballs at random enemies. I have this as a build around card. It is really good. 3 fireballs, 18 damage, nothing to sneeze at. 8 mana, obviously come down a little bit late, but I think it's a fantastic finisher for the fire spell deck, and every fire spell is good, so if I'm casting one on every turn, I wouldn't be surprised. Especially since we have one that the 1 mana spell adds a second copy. It's in 2 parts. We have Ignites. We can maybe boost one of his fireballs by 2 spell damage. Seems like a good card, pretty decent finisher. I really like this card a lot, and I think it'll see a lot of play. Alright, next up we have Paladin, starting off with their quest, Rise to the Occasion. Questline, play 3 different 1-cost cards. Your reward is a 1/4 Lights Justice, which is this guy right here. We've all seen that card, and we've never played it. The next card up is Pave the Way in the questline. Play 3 different 1-cost cards. Reward, upgrade your hero power. You can be Odd Paladin. And then finally, play 3 more 1-cost cards, and your reward is Lightborn Cariel, who is a 5 mana 7/7 battle cry. For the rest of the game, your Silverhand recruits have +2/+2. This is way too much investment to have 3/3 Silverhand recruits. Even if your button is making 6/6 every turn, this is like a bad version of Jiraxis, because you have to play 9 different 1-cost cards, which means at least a third of your deck are 1-drops, and that is not going to hold up when you're playing against any meta deck. It's fun, but it's filler, unfortunately. It's just not a good quest. Alright, next up we have Blessed Goods. Discover a secret, a weapon, or a Divine Shield minion. This is a budget card. It's supposed to most likely support the quest, because you can discover a secret, which is a 1-cost card in Paladin. It's just not good enough. It's great for budget players when you really don't have a lot of good cards to fill out your deck. This could help you discover one instead, but any fully realized tier deck will not need this card in it. There's just too many misses to justify a 1 mana, maybe kind of sort of draw card. We don't even play Snack Run, and that heals you, so I just don't see this being good. Next up, we have Prismatic Jewel Kit, which is a 1 mana 0/3 weapon. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, give minions in your hand +1/+1 and lose 1 durability. It's not a terrible card. I think it's pretty good. There is a hand buff type of theme they're going for, and it actually seems pretty decent because it's hand buff with Divine Shield. I think it's good. It may not be staple status, like it's probably something that's cuttable from that deck, but it is definitely a playable card. Next up, we have City Tax, 2 mana, lifesteal, deal 1 damage to all minions, and it's tradable. I think this is going to be a staple. Even if it's just a one-of in something like Libram Paladin, it helps you clear a lot of low-health minions or people that go wide. You can combine it with a Thalnos to do an extra 1 damage. You can combine it with your 3 mana Barov and clear their board, gain some health. And when you don't need it, just ship it back. Tradable is a fantastic mechanic that allows tech cards like these to actually become mainstays, so I would say staple. Next up, we have Noble Mount. 2 mana, Give a minion +1/+1 and Divine Shield. When it dies, summon a Warhorse, and the Warhorse is a 1/1 Divine Shield minion. I think that this will wind up becoming a staple for sure. Is every Paladin deck will probably want this. Divine Shield is huge. Giving a minion +1/+1 is not fantastic for 2 mana. Pretty good. Plus, you have the Death Rattle of leaving a 1/1 behind that you can then buff, so it may even squeeze into things like Libram Paladin. Overall, very solid card. Then we have Alliance Bannerman. Battlecry, draw a minion, give minions in your hand +1/+1, and it is a 3 mana 2/2. I think this is going to be a staple in the hand buff deck, obviously, but it can also wind up being found in other decks. Drawing a minion and then also buffing them is pretty good. This could wind up replacing the secret package in Libram Paladin, because now you have a good 3-drop to play that helps out the other cards in your hand and thins your deck a little bit better with no prerequisite of having a secret. Card is really strong, and if Hand Buff Paladin becomes a deck, I think it's because this card and the legendary were printed. Next up, we have Catacomb Guard. I'm going to put this down as good. It's a staple for sure in hand buff. Everywhere else, it's just okay. If you have a little bit of hand buff, it can kind of do something. So, very, very dependent on the quest, but mostly just a hand buff card. Next up, we have Lightbringer's Hammer. 3 mana, 3/2 lifesteal weapon that cannot attack heroes. This is a staple. People were playing the Murloc weapon in mid-range Paladin just because it was a good weapon, and it did have small upside. Some of the Murlocs were pretty good. This should replace that. Clears minions, gives you lifesteal, slots into Libram Paladin really well to keep you alive and clear some threats. Card is fantastic. Next up, we have First Blade of Rin. It is a good card. Obviously, it should be a staple in hand buff. I don't think it really finds a spot anywhere else. Mid-range Paladin may be able to take some use of it because it does have Divine Shield, and it's a 3/5 for 4, which is not terrible with Divine Shield. But you really only want to be playing this in hand buff and pretty much nowhere else. Next up, we have High Lord Fordragon. 6 mana, 5/5 Divine Shield. After a friendly minion loses Divine Shield, give a minion in your hand +5/+5. This is the build around card that you are going to build your hand buff to include. The stats are nuts. This makes me want to just search charge and find anything that I can jack up and smack face with. Most of these hand buff cards, I think for sure, will find a spot in Wild, because Wild already has a very, very strong hand buff Paladin deck, and these help as far as I can tell. High Lord Fordragon may not be good in Wild, but I think it'll be good enough to see some serious play in Standard. Alright. Next up, we have the class that is still not deleted, amazingly, Priest, with their quest, Seek Guidance. Play a 2, 3, and 4 cost card, and the reward is you discover a card from your deck. Then you have Discover the Void Shard, which is play a 5 and 6 cost to discover a card from your deck again. Then you have Illuminate the Void. Questline, play a 7 and 8 cost card, and your reward is Zyrella the Sanctified, who is a 5 mana 7/7 taunt with Battlecry. Shuffle the BS into your deck. I mean Purified Shard. So Purified Shard, the BS, is 10 mana, destroy the enemy hero. Why? Why, Priest? Why do this? So, this quest is nuts for me. I think this card is insane. You are playing Queststone. Turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. You are playing on curve. You can even skip some turns because it's Priest and you have removal and it's obnoxious. So you can even play off curve and eventually you just win the game off Purified Shard. The other thing that I really like about this quest is even though you play a card down in the beginning, it not only draws you cards, but it discovers you a card. So you are drawing a card and you're more likely to find something that fits the scenario you're in. I think this is build around for sure. It should definitely pop up. This will be some type of Priest deck. I just don't see it not being one, especially since you're wanting to play 8-drops anyway. You can just play Primordial Protector to get into your Soul Mirrors for clears, summon a 7-drop, and then you can also play it after the quest is complete to win the game with your 10 mana spell. Ironically, the only thing that may stop this is your priest opponent swapping hands and taking it from you somehow, and that's really the only thing they can do, and even that's hard because it's a 10-mana spell, so they most likely won't be able to fit both in the same turn. It's pretty nutty. Next up, we have Call of the Grave. 1 mana, discover a Death Rattle minion. If you have enough mana to play it, trigger its Death Rattle. This card is budget. I don't see any deck, even the Shadow deck that could only play Shadow spells. No deck actually wants this in Priest right now, and there's no Death Rattle deck that's either coming or exists that is like, yeah, discover a Death Rattle. It's budget because it helps you discover cards when you literally don't have other cards. But it's not that budget because it's an epic, so eh. Next up, we have 1 mana, Shard of the Naru. Tradable, silence all enemy minions. Why is this a card? This comes off of Wandmaker. It is discovered by all of Priest's Discover cards. It's 1 mana silence token druid, and it's tradable. So you're either discovering a draw card off of your Wandmaker. It is kind of nice that it fudges the Wandmaker's pool up, but they already did that by nerfing Restore. I like it. I think this card is definitely a staple. The tradable pushes it to staple status. Even if you're only silencing 1 to 2 minions, sometimes that's enough, especially when they have really good death rattles or they're just big taunts or something like that. And you don't need a silence, but you need a draw. Shard of the Naru's got you there too. For sure, staple. Next up, Void Touched Attendant. 1 mana, 1/3. Both heroes take 1 extra damage from all sources. I have this as a good card. It obviously will go into the Shadow Priest deck because it is a 1-drop that pushes your agenda. Outside of that, it's just good. You can play it in maybe like a curvy type of Priest, but I don't really see it doing much else than being an okay include in Shadow. Next, we have Shadowcloth Needle, 2 mana, 0/3 weapon. After you cast a Shadow spell, deal 1 damage to all enemies, and it loses durability. I have this too as like, kind of feel like it's a budget card. Or filler, honestly, because the only deck that would actually want this is the Shadow deck, and I don't know that this is good enough to make the cut. 2 mana pass, it's not something you want to be doing, and then the reward of dealing 1 to everything is just okay. There has to be like a lot of token and a lot of 1 health minions for you to want this, so I think it's a filler. Next, we have Twilight Deceptor. 2 mana, 2/3, Battle Cry. If any hero took damage this turn, draw a Shadow spell. I think this is a staple. It is a staple in the Shadow deck. It will most likely find a home in some other Priest decks too. It draws a spell, and all you have to do is either hurt them or get hurt yourself. It's just good. I really like this card a lot, and it's good stats for a 2-drop too. On next card, 3 mana, 3/4 Psyfiend. After you cast a Shadow spell, deal 2 damage to each hero. Card's good for specifically the Shadow deck, so I just have it as a good card. It's not good enough anywhere else. It's a staple in Shadow Priest, then that's about it. Next up, we have 4 mana, the Void Shard. Lifesteal, deal 4 damage, and it's Shadow. It is a good card. I think it's a 2 of right now in Shadow Priest, but as more Shadow cards come out, you may wind up cutting this for other things. 4 for 4 damage is good. Lifesteal is good. It's not broken by any means, just a good card. Then we have Dark Bishop Benedictus. Start of the game, if the spells in your deck are all Shadow, enter Shadow form. Obviously, it is built around because you need to build around it, and I think that being able to cosplay as a hunter that can target minions should be good enough. It might be a tier 2 deck. It might not be a tier 1 deck, especially when Control Priest can just outright kill you. But I still think the card is good, so I'll put it as a build around. This is only going to get better with time. It's definitely proficient enough now to do decent things on ladder, and it could become very, very, very strong if they print the right Shadow cards, which is something they seem to be interested in doing. Next we have Elic Mount. 7 mana, give a minion +4/+7, and taunt. When it dies, you summon a Elic. The Elic is a 4/7 taunt as well. I think this is a budget option. There's no priest that's really fighting for board, that wants buffs right now, this is something you could for sure discover off of a discover card and equip and be happy about. Maybe it's something that you include in the curve quest deck, but I don't really want to, like, I'm not super excited about including it. I feel like there's better sevens we can play, even if it's just Soul Mirror and we clear their board. Something that makes me excited, maybe the 7-mana dragon that discovers a dragon. Like, there are better sevens to be playing than just giving a minion some stats and a death rattle. Not a bad card, just good. Next up, we have Rogue with Find the Imposter. Questline, play 2 SI7 cards, reward, add a spy gizmo to your hand. Then we have Learn the Truth, play 2 SI7 cards once again, reward, add a spy gizmo to your hand once again. And then Marked a Traitor, play 2 SI7 cards, reward, Spy Master Scabs, who is a 5-mana 7/7, add one of each gizmo to your hand. And the gizmos are Fizz Flash, Distractor, you return enemy minion to the hand, and the opponent cannot play it next turn. We have Spyomatic, a 1-mana 3/2. You look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, pick which one they want to draw, or you pick which one they're going to draw. Noggin Fog Generator, give a minion +2 attack and stealth. Hidden Gyroblade, it's a 1-mana 3/2 weapon with Death Rattle. You just chuck it at a random enemy minion. Undercover Mole, 1-mana 2/3 stealth. After it attacks, you add a random card to your hand from your opponent's class. So one of the things that I think is super important in Rogue is to take into consideration how ridiculous the class is. Every single spoiler season, people look at Rogue cards and they go, this isn't that great, it doesn't do that much. And then Rogue turns around and has one of the best core sets and one of the best hero powers, and we just make it work. So with that being said, I think that this is a build around for sure. The SI7 cards are good. They're not all game breaking, but they are good enough. And the gizmos are very good. I think somebody will be able to find a way to abuse the gizmos and abuse all the SI cards with your Shadow Stabs, your 10 Woos, your discounts off of Octobot. There are so many different things in Rogue that really make me feel like this is going to be good. So I hope I'm right, because it also looks like a lot of fun. Next up, SI7 Extortion. 1 mana, tradable, deal 3 damage to an undamaged character. We played this for 3 mana in the Galakron deck. This for sure is a staple in the quest, and I think it's also a staple outside of the quest. You'll see at least one of these in a couple of the Rogue decks, just for the tradable. And the damage is good. It's just a better backstab. I can see this being played. It's a strong card for sure. Next up, we have Garrote. 2 mana, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. Shuffle 3 bleeds into your deck that deal 2 more when drawn. And these are the bleeds, which are 1 mana. Cast when drawn, deal 2 damage. For this one, I think it is good. It's a lot of extra damage, so you can put it into the current build of Rogue that we have just to maybe give you a little bit more reach. I don't know what you're going to cut for this, though. This would be really good in Weapon Rogue, so I can see it finding a home. I just don't think it's necessary. We don't have the card that draws things that didn't start in your deck anymore, from what I know, so it's not as promising. Next up, we have Maestra of the Masquerade. 2 mana, 3/2. You start the game as a different class until you play a Rogue card. This card is super fun. I'm so excited to play this card. That being said, I think it's just a tech card. So if the meta is full of aggro decks or mid-range decks, and you're playing an aggro Rogue deck, this doesn't do anything for you. Your opponent is still going to mulligan against aggressive cards. So let's say you masquerade as a hunter, your opponent keeps all of their early game, and it counters your early game as Rogue. This card didn't do anything for you, and it's a Bloodfin Raptor. It's just a 2 mana 3/2. If the format is mostly control decks and you happen to be an aggro, you can pull some sneaky sneaks with this. I think it's super fun. I think it's really cool, and there's definitely some utility with being able to play the Pandaren Explorer or like Scorpid and discover a card from the class that you currently are. But then that means you have to not be playing Quest, because turn 1 you're going to jam Quest. Or it means you have to also just not play 1-drop in general unless it is neutral, which is possible. But yeah, I just think it's a tech card. It's fun. You may play it when the meta calls for it. Otherwise, it's just a 3/2 that doesn't do too much, aside from maybe a small amount of head games in the beginning. Next up, we have Loan Shark, a 3 mana, 3/4 battle cry. Give your opponent a coin. Death Rattle, as Loan Sharks do. You get 2. I think this is a budget card at best. It's not filler because you do gain more advantage than your opponent, and it's good stats for 3. I don't think it's necessarily going to be included in much off the rip. There's nothing that makes me really, really, really want to play this. There is a small Death Rattle deck kind of idea going on, or Death Rattle package, but that's not enough to make me want to actually include it. So it's budget. Next up, SI7 Operative. 3 mana, 2/4 rush. After this attacks a minion, gain stealth. I put this down as a good card. It's really, really good in the quest because it has SI7 in the name. And even in regular rogue decks, it's a good source of removal, and it could also leave you a body behind that's stealth that they can't interact with. I don't know that it'll necessarily make it into the current iterations of rogue we have now, but it should be enough to give the quest a fighting chance. Sketchy Information. It's a 3 mana spell, draw a Death Rattle card that costs 4 or less, and triggers Death Rattle. My issue with this card is it doesn't really fit comfortably into anything. You could have like a small little Sketchy Information package with the Shark to give you 2 coins, Liliana to summon a 4/2, hopefully hit face, and then also the Ticketmaster to shuffle 3 tickets into your deck, and then you have board presence. So it's kind of like a mid-range draw card. The issue with it is I think there's just better draw. There's just better engines with our little mini miracle package for draws and combos and things like that. It's something to keep an eye on. It could definitely get better if we get more Death Rattles and we find some kind of good aggressive mid-range type of strategy. But for right now, it's at best a budget card. Up for Rogue, we have Counterfeit Blade. 4 mana, 4/2, Battle Cry. Gain a random friendly Death Rattle, and that triggered this game. So this has the similar issue as the previous card. It's a budget card for now. There's some potential with shuffling the Ticketmaster Death Rattle in a bunch of times and having a like true silver champion type of weapon that will do it again. I think it needs more support to be something we actually want to play. If you're a budget player, for sure, you could throw this in. It's a good source of damage, and if you have a decent Death Rattle to go with it, you may be able to improve your deck by a little bit. But other than that, not very great. Next up, SI Informant. 4 mana, 3/3, Battle Cry, gain +1/+1 for each SI7 card you've played this game. This one is SI deck only. Everywhere else, you don't play this card. In the quest deck, you play 1, maybe 2, because you can get a big boy, and it obviously combos off your other SI cards and also helps you trigger the quest. But that's the only place I want to see it in, so for that reason, I'm going to put it as a good card. Next, we have SI7 Assassin. Basically the same issue as the other one. A 7 mana 4/4. It costs 1 less for each SI7 card you play this game. Combo destroy an enemy minion. The more SI cards you play, the better this card is. The better this card is, the more you want to play the quest. So this is a quest only card. Again, for sure a staple 2 of in that quest. Combo destroy minions, getting discounted. It's a 4/4. It's everything I want. It's rewarding me for playing the quest in a meaningful way for Rogue. Everywhere else, probably not going to play it, because if you wind up wanting to play this, you're going to want to jam the quest in. So we're going to put it down as a good card again. Alright, next up we have Shaman, and as always, we are starting with the Shaman quest. So the Command the Elements quest line, play 3 cards with Overload, reward, unlock your overloaded mana crystals. Followed by Stir the Stones, quest line, play 3 more cards with Overload, and your reward is to summon a 3/3 elemental with Taunt. Finally, we have Tame the Flames, only 2 Overload cards this time, and then you play Stormcaller Brukan. Stormcaller Brukan is a 5 mana 7/7 with Battle Cry. For the rest of the game, your spells cast twice, which is insane. Also, they have their little Living Earth token here. So, the issue I have with this quest is it's 8 Overload cards, very similar to the Mage quest where you have to play 9 spells and then expect to still have spells to use after the quest is complete. Now, this does have the benefit of allowing you to play Overload minions and therefore save your spells to be comboing with Brukan. But as of right now, there's just not a big enough payoff that I know will win me the game. if I take the time to do all 8 overload cards. And the most intriguing part of the quest is actually the first part, where after you've overloaded, you get to unlock your crystals. However, there is a card in the set that does that better than this, and for that reason, I'm just gonna put it down as a filler card for now. I wouldn't even play this if you're budget. It definitely has future potential, so it's a bit of a sleeper. We just need spells that we know will be able to go face other than Lightning Bolt and like the 3 mana portal. We need more face damage. We need like Lava Burst or Lava Shock, the one that does 5. We need something else. It's just not there. I would not worry about it too much right now. Next up, we have Investment Opportunity, of which this is not. 1 mana, draw an overload card. There is potential for this eventually. It's a budget card. If you need to fill your deck, it could be a 39th and 40th slot, similar to the Demon Hunter draw card for 1 mana. This would be great if there was a card with overload I wanted to target draw. The only thing I want to do that with right now is Doomhammer, and our Cage Match Custodian does a much better job of that than this does. So it's borderline filler, but it's not quite that bad, so I'd put it in budget. Next, we have Overdraft. 1 mana, tradable, unlock your overloaded mana crystals to deal that much damage. I have this down as a good card. It's not broken. I think a lot of people are overhyping this. 1 mana tradable is pretty decent. The class doesn't have that much draw, and this is just a generic draw 1. And also, if your crystals are overloaded, it does a buttload of damage, considering you have a buttload of locked crystals, and it can go face, which is pretty good. So this would see play in the quest deck as you are overloading crystals, but I think it's better in just a regular shaman deck where you're going to overload a decent amount and you could unlock your crystals and go face, which to me this is a better version of the quest. You can play 2 of them and it's doing the thing you actually want from the early stages, which is giving you your mana back. So definitely a good card. Next up, 2 mana 2/2 Auction House Gavel. After your hero attacks, reduce the cost of a battlecry minion in your hand by 1. Cool art, cool theme, but I think it is a budget card at best. And the reason for that is we already have a 2 mana card that we want to play, which is Cage Match Custodian, and we want that to either be drawing the Whack-A-Null Hammer or our Doomhammer. So I don't want to be playing a 2-drop and then getting the Gavel off of him, unless there are just a ton of battle cries and elementals that we're really looking to cheat out, but there's a better card that does that, and there's also the 1-drop that does that a little bit better. So if you're a budget player and you need a weapon, this would be a great fit, but other than that, you won't be playing it much. Next up, we have Bolner Hammerbeak. 2 mana 1/4. After you play a battlecry minion, repeat the first battlecry played this turn. This card is nuts. Right off the bat, it enables the Yasiraj OTK. You play Bolner, you Lightning Bloom, you play Yasiraj, which adds the Corrupted Clown that deals 4 to your opponent, and your Dunk Tank to your hand. You can get 1 to 2 of each of those. Then every time you play the Clown, you trigger Yasiraj again, adding another Clown. Eventually, when your board is full, you can just use the Dunk Tank on your own Clown, because it just says deal 4 damage, doesn't have to target enemies. And you just go Clown, face, bolt the Clown, Clown, face, dive, or Dunk Tank the Clown, rinse, repeat, and then eventually throw some Dunk Tanks face, because they all cost 0. It seems pretty nutty. It is definitely a build around, because you can literally make an OTK finisher for a control type of shaman. Whether or not it's good enough, we will have to see. I personally think it's going to be pretty decent, and I'm sure someone will look at this card and find some absolutely ridiculous combos. It just lends itself to be broken. It's similar to ETC when somebody found to clone the ETC attack for 8 million damage, but this is way more flexible because you don't have to interact with your opponent. You can just play Battlecry minions. Definitely good card for me. Next up, we have Charge Call, 3 mana. Discover a 1-cost minion and summon it. Upgraded for each overloaded card you played this game. I'm assuming it upgrades the 1 cost to a higher cost. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. For me, I think it's a budget card. Historically, when you're putting a lot of Overload cards in the deck, you want them to kill your opponent. You don't want to then be playing a big minion. It's just not enough of a payoff. We actually had a giant that discounted itself for each crystal you overloaded. It would be discounted by that much, and that card didn't see play. I can't imagine that this would be much better. It's a cool budget card. It fits in with the quest to a certain degree, but I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't see this in any meta decks. We have Canal Slogger, a 4 mana 6/4 elemental, rush, and lifesteal, but it does overload you. I think this card is bonkers. It should be a staple in every elemental deck that wants to fight for board. Probably also control will want to use this. This is 6 lifesteal for no good reason on turn 4. This card's great. I love it. Rush is awesome. The lifesteal's good. Overload, obviously, big sad, but there are cards that interact with Overload in a decent way now. I think we're going to see this card a lot. It's very, very good. And next up, we have Granite Forgeborn, a 4 mana 4/5. Battlecry. Reduce the cost of elementals in your hand and deck by 1. I don't know why this was printed. It seems insane. Maybe they really want elementals to be good. And honestly, when I was building Elemental Curve, I was really looking for a good 4-drop. The current 2/6 taunt, deal 1 to everything, was just very okay. Its best property was that it cost 4 and filled out my curve, and other than that, I didn't really care for it. But this and the rush minions, I think, are going to fill out that curve really nicely and push Elemental to be a good deck, so this is a staple for sure. Next up, we have Spirit Alpha, a 4 mana 2/5 with, after you play a card with Overload, summon a 2/3 Spirit Wolf with Taunt. This is reminiscent of Feral Spirits, which is the 3 mana summon 2/3 wolves with Taunt and Overload for 1. This is probably a worse version of that, because the only thing that will combo with it is like Lightning Bloom, and I don't know when I want to go 4-drop Bloom, 2-drop into maybe 1 or 2 wolves. It's a budget card for sure. It's not the worst. It could definitely help you round out a deck, but it's not something that I would want to include in any competitive deck for the foreseeable future. Then we have Tiny Toys. 6 mana, summon 4 random 5-cost minions and make them 2/2. Now, this set did add a couple of 5-drops that you don't really want to be hitting with this. Also added a good one in the Wind Fury enabler. But that being said, the reason you're really going to be playing this is with either Revolve or the Bogspine Knuckles to evolve your minions into 6-drops, which seems kind of nutty. Bogspine on 5, this on 6, evolve a bunch of minions, make them crazy. I think it'll be good. I don't know if that deck will be tier 1 per se, but whenever Evolve gets good, it's usually too good. So do not sleep on this card. There's a very good possibility that this will be the new Shaman deck, just because Evolve is annoying. Next up is Warlock with their quest, the Demon Seed. Quest line, take 6 damage on your turns. Reward, lifesteal, you do 3 damage to the enemy hero, gaining 3 yourself. Then you get the second part, establish the link. Take 7, same thing, deal 3, heal 3. And finally, complete the ritual. Take 8 on your turns, and you get Blightborn Tamsin, who is a 5 mana 7/7 that makes it Battlecry for the rest of the game. On your turns, any damage you take is instead inflicted to your opponents. This quest is phenomenal. Any late game fatigue, self-damage cards, anything like that, you're instead going to be shipping straight to your opponent's face, which is exactly where you want that damage to go. And for Warlock, this is a very easy quest to complete. Tapping, taking 2 damage, drawing a card, backfire, deal 3 to yourself, draw 3. There's just a plethora of cards that help you complete this quest. And self-mill yourself, like Altar, Fire, the backfire, overdrawing, or just drawing cards in general. And in this case, getting to fatigue isn't as necessarily a bad thing as it was in the past. The old mill deck, you tried to win with the 3/2s by self-milling, and a lot of times you would get there. Sometimes it might just not be good enough, but fatigue is always good enough. It will always kill your opponent. As long as you have enough removal to make sure that they don't kill you on the board, you will continuously be pushing more damage to their face. This quest seems great. It is a build-around card for sure, and I think we will see any kind of Warlock deck take off. It'd be this one. Next up, we have Touch of the Nethrazim. 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion. If it dies, restore 4 health to your hero. I think it's a good card. It'll definitely see some play. It'll probably find a home in Quest because you're going to be taking increased damage, and therefore you're going to be wanting more heal effects. I don't think it's a necessarily busted 2 of. It may just be a 1 of inclusion, maybe a 0, so just a good card. Then we have Bloodbound Imp, a 2 mana 2/5. Whenever this attacks, you deal 2 damage to your hero. This one I think is good. It helps you build more of a Demon Zoo deck with the 3 mana draw 2. If they're demons, they cost 2 less. You could cheat this out. It's a really well statted minion for turn 2, and the drawback of dealing damage doesn't really matter too much. I don't think this will find its way into the quest deck because that feels more like a control deck than play a 2/5 type of deck. But it should find a home in Zoo, so overall a good card. Next up we have Dreaded Mount. 3 mana, give a minion +1/+1. When it dies, summon an Endless Dreadsteed, which is Tamsin's Dreadsteed. 4 mana 1/1, Death Rattle. At the end of the turn it summons itself again. Endless. This is budget. +1/+1 for 3 is not great. 1/1 that keeps summoning itself, also not great. Maybe it would squeeze into a Zoo, but even then I don't think it feels at home, especially since we got new silence options this set. It just doesn't feel great. Cool flavor though. I really like the Dreadsteed being the mount, but other than that, I wouldn't play it. Ruined Mithril Rod, 3 mana 0/2. After you draw 4 cards, reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1, and it loses its durability. I'm gonna put this down as a budget pick for now. There's no deck that I want to jam this into. Handlock, I want to keep my hand size large. Quest, I don't want to be passing turn 3 doing nothing. I probably want to be removing something. So can definitely be busted. Somebody could definitely break it. It's that type of card where someone's like, oh, you draw a bunch of cards, you get this discount, and then, well, wombo combo. But I just see it as a budget pick. It's not really something crazy. Next up, we have Dark Alley Pact. 4 mana, summon a fiend with stats equal to your hand size. This is a build-around card for the handlock archetype. Now, this card makes me question why they got rid of Mountain Giant, because it's kind of a Mountain Giant. It's just a better Mountain Giant. So it feels like they were like, oh, Corset, we're not going to have a Mountain Giant this year. Psych, here it is. It's a 4 mana spell. Card's really good. If you're playing Handlock, you're summoning a 9/9 and 8/8. I'm down for that on turn 4. That sounds phenomenal. Force Priest to play some Shadow Word Deaths, otherwise they're going to get rolled over by a big boy. But yeah, definitely a staple for me. Next up, Demonic Assault. 4 mana, deal 3 damage, summon 2 1/3 Void Walkers with Taunt. I think this is a budget pick as well. The card itself is not the worst thing ever, but 4 mana for 3 damage, even though it can go upstairs, hit your opponent in the face, just to get 2 1/3s, I don't think that's quite good enough for Zoo. You'd probably just want to play a bunch of cheaper minions or maybe spend time tapping, and it's not going to make it into any control as far as I can tell. You'd probably rather play something that clears and heals you rather than sets up 2 little taunts and, hope for the best. So, budget. Next we have Shady Bartender, 5 mana, 4/4, tradable. Battlecry, give your demons +2/+2. I think it's an alright card. It's probably going to be a budget pick. I was going to put it into like a Demon Zoo lock, but I actually like the 5 mana 5/5 give your minions Wind Fury a little bit better. Both this and that minion interfere with the 3 mana draw the demons, discount them, but at least the other one's giving you a Wind Fury payoff. This could find a home in a deck. It's definitely not a bad card, especially with tradable. It's one of those cards where like, oh, I don't have a board, I'll just get rid of it and draw a card. So there's some potential here, but I'd put it as a budget option. Next we have Antherin. 6 mana, 8/6, costs 1 if your hand is full. This is a staple card in Handlock, and that's about it. It's really bad in anything that's not Handlock. Even Control Warlock is not guaranteed to have a full hand at most points in the game. You're building your deck specifically to accommodate the 4 mana spell, and then this slots in because of it. So he's just a good card. He's not crazy. He's a weaker Mountain Giant, 2 less health. He's a legendary. He's only a 1 out of... it's good. I think people are undervaluing him. He'll definitely have a place, but it's not a build around per se because you're actually building the deck around the spell rather than him. Next we have Entitled Customer, a 6 mana 3/2 Battlecry, deal damage equal to your hand size to all other minions. This is one of my favorite cards in the set because the flavor is on point and his voice lines are hilarious. But yeah, this card's great. This would probably be good in both Control and Handlock. This is a staple for sure, especially for Handlock. Obviously, just deal 8 or 9 to everything. More board clears are good. I like board clears that leave a minion behind and also help me corrupt my other stuff. this guy's great. I can't wait to play with him. It's going to be funny. Next up, we have Warrior with Raid the Docks, the Warrior quest. Quest line, play 3 pirates. The reward, you draw a weapon, followed by create a distraction. Play 2 pirates, and then you deal 2 damage to a random enemy twice. Then you have secure the supplies. Play 2 more pirates, and you get Captain Rakara, which is another one of my favorite cards from the set. 5 mana, 7/7. Battle Cry, summon the Juggernaut, which is a dormant token. And at the start of your turn, you summon a pirate, equip a weapon, and then fire 2 cannons that deal 2 damage. Flavor-wise, this quest is fantastic. Competitive-wise, unfortunately, I don't think so much. Rush Warrior just seems better. I feel like if you directly played against Rush Warrior with this deck, you would wind up falling behind and then hope that your quest picks you back up, which it can. It does have a slight edge in control matchups where the Juggernaut is continuously dealing 4 damage every turn, continuously giving you a weapon every turn, and a pirate, so you literally never run out of stuff to throw at them. But you're forced to play a bunch of pirates that are decent. This would probably be better in Wild, and even then it's a little clunky because you have to play the pirates. You can't just summon them. So things like tokens and patches and the 2/2 that comes out of your hand do not count, which brings the power level down quite a bit. I'd say it's a budget/fun type of quest. Definitely, if you have it and you have the cards, play it. I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun on launch, but I don't think it's going to wind up being the dominant warrior archetype. Next card, we have Provoke, a 0 mana tradable. Choose a friendly minion. Enemy minions attack it. This card is something I would only want to discover in certain scenarios where I'll be like, oh, it's not a card I would put in my deck, even with tradable. I don't see you being happy about either drawing or having this in your hand the majority of the time. And if you wanted to just play cards that thin your deck, you might as well just play Loot Hoarder. At least it's a body. It's not the worst card I've ever seen, obviously, because it does have potential to help your Discover pool, but it is a filler card as far as usability. I wouldn't even throw this into a bunch of deck, just only Discover this. Next one, Shiver Their Timbers. 1 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion. If you control a pirate, you deal 5 instead. In the pirate deck, absolutely include this. It's great there. But other than that, it's kind of like a good card. It's not good enough, I don't think, because Control Warrior, which is the deck that would primarily want something like this, has access to too much removal right now. That's a little bit better. This is targeted, but it requires a pirate. You'll play it in the pirate deck because you have room in that deck, and that's really about it. But it is a good card, just outshined by some others. Next up, we have Harbor Scamp, a 2 mana 2/2. Battle Cry, draw a pirate. This card's great. I really like this card. Unfortunately, it's not a staple in everything, because even in Rush Warrior, I don't want to play a 2/2 that draws my taunt. I'd rather just draw it off of the 5 mana guy, and I'd rather be playing my Parade Leader or my Rush Minions on 2. Absolute staple in the Pirate deck. It makes that deck way more consistent, and it is a good card. It'll have a good future in Standard. Maybe after rotation, and maybe Rush rotates out or something like that, it'll be better, but just good. Next up, Cargo Guard, 3 mana 2/4. At the end of your turn, you gain 3 armor. Good mid-range card. I wouldn't really put it in much else except for maybe Pirate. It might squeak into Control, just barely, because of the 3 armor. The 3 armor is pretty relevant, but other than that, just good. Next up, Heavy Plate. Tradable, you gain 8 armor, and it's 3 mana. This card is kind of a filler. It's worse shield block, not that we have access to that in Standard at the moment, but the only deck that you would really want this against is if you're playing against aggro. And when I'm playing against aggro, I don't want to spend 3 mana gaining 8 life and passing the turn. And the fact that it's tradable is not going to help either, because now I have to cycle this dead card and hopefully play a 2-drop alongside of it to make sure I don't fall too far behind on board and wind up dying anyway. It's a cool idea, but I just don't think it's strong enough. Next up, we have the Stormwind Freebooter. It's a 3 mana 3/3. Battle Cry, give your hero +2 attack this turn. This card is good, really good in the pirate deck, just because it is a pirate and it's good stats with a good effect. If any mid-range warrior deck emerges that is not Rush, this would also find a home there, but I think it's only going to be seeing play in the quest deck, so I'll put it down as just good. Next up, remote-controlled Golem, 4 mana 3/6. After this minion takes damage, shuffle 2 Golem parts into your deck. When drawn, summon a 2/1 mech. Now, the 2/1 mech is not displayed, so I don't know if it has any kind of abilities or anything like that. I doubt it. I feel like it would have said it on the card. So, a 2/1 mech with nothing, like no rush, no death rattle, no anything, no impact on the board of any kind, is pretty bad. 4 mana 3/6 is okay, but I just don't want 2/1s just randomly popping up on my board. This is a filler card for sure. I don't see any mech synergies that specifically care about this. Even in Wild, I probably would not be playing this, even though the 2/1s would then get Rush from Dr. Boom. It's just not great. Next up, we have Cowardly Grunt. It's a 6 mana 6/2 with Death Rattle. Summon a minion from your deck. This won't be pushing the archetype of Big Warrior, I feel. Big Warrior was a deck only when we had the 10 mana spell that would summon 2 copies. Right now, Commencement is not enough to make Big Warrior a thing, and this doesn't help because it just clashes with Commencement. So this is another filler that you will not be seeing in competitive decks this season, I feel. Alright, next up we have Lothar, a 7 mana 7/7. At the end of your turn, attack a random enemy minion. If it dies, gain +3/+3. This is a budget card. It's good. It kills a minion. It's like a pseudo Ragnaros. It can't go face until it's your turn. Then you can attack face, which is where it kind of shines. You can push face, then kill something. But it's just a pile of stats. And if you're going to be playing this in any deck that cares about a pile of stats, you'd much rather have a Troublemaker, summoning 2/3/3s, beating people in the face. That's your closer, not just big stats the minion. So if you're budget, you're in a pinch, you need something to fill out your deck, absolutely not a bad card by any means, but competitively, you're not going to have this in a refined deck. Alright, next we have our neutral cards, and we are starting things off with the Elwyn Boar. This is a phenomenal South Park reference, and outside of that, it's just a meme. So basically a meme all around. It is a 1 mana 1/1 Death Rattle. If you had 7 boars die this game, equip a 15/3 Sword of 1,000 Truths. After your hero attacks, destroy your opponent's mana crystals. Obviously, the sword is nutty. Getting the boars to combo off involve these crazy convoluted combos that I don't think will actually be good enough to survive in Standard. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the new beast shuffling and all this kind of things can make it viable. If I pull this card in a pack, I will definitely be messing around with it just for fun, but I don't think it'll be competitive, so it is a filler card. Next up, we have Peasant. It's a 1 mana 2/1. At the start of your turn, draw a card. This is another card that I feel like is being severely underrated. Even though it's not great later on in the game, a 2/1 for 1 stat line is really good, especially if you're not on the coin, meaning you can play your 1-drop and your opponent only has 1 mana to answer this, which means outside of Demon Hunter, they would need an actual tangible card because they don't have a hero power answer on 1. So you draw 1 card and it's aggro stat, which I'm fine with. I don't think it's game breaking or anything, but I think it's good and it'll find a home in maybe a couple of aggro decks. Maybe Face Hunter would be able to include this and be able to push a little bit of damage. It's not as bad as people think, but not broken by any means. Next up, we have Stockade's Guard. Another good, flexible card. This may actually be what pushes Peasant out of being played. It's a 1 mana battle cry. Give a friendly minion taunt with 1/3 stat line. That is the best stat line we've seen on a 1-drop. 1/3 is always the best stat line. It could definitely be played. We saw Dire Mole being played just because it had 1/3 stats and it was a vanilla effect. This is an upgraded version of that, so it is good and it will see play. Next up, Auctioneer Jackson. Whenever you trade, discover a card from your deck to draw instead as a 2 mana 2/3. This is like a budget or tech card in my opinion. If you have the room in your deck to include it, absolutely. Not every trade card is that good, and the thing that makes trade appealing is that you can just ditch the card when you have the extra mana and you don't want to keep it in your hand. I don't think I want to also commit a River Crocolisk to then discover a card from my deck. Chances are if I'm drawing a card from my deck, it's something that I would want anyway. I don't necessarily need to discover it, even though this does turn it into tracking, which is very good. It's not a mandatory inclusion. It probably won't be a staple in competitive decks. Next up, we have Deep Run Engineer. 2 mana, 1/2 battle cry. Discover a mech. It costs 1 less. This is a filler. There is no mech that I want to discover. And if I do want to discover, even if 1 less, I probably still don't want it. So this is not even, I wouldn't even put this in budget. Maybe if you're really desperate for something, but not something I would throw in a deck. Next up, Encumbered Pack Mule, Taunt. When you draw this, add a copy of it to your hand. I think this is auto-include in Handlock, and for that reason alone, I am going to give it a good card status. It's pretty good in anything that fights for board. You can also throw this into Taunt Druid. Maybe it boosts Taunt Druid's power just a little bit, because you have back-to-back 2-drops that you can play alongside your discount card, making them free. And it's not bad. 2 mana, 2/3 Taunt is pretty good stat line. It's okay. Next up, we have Florist. 2 mana, 2/3. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of a nature spell in your hand by 1. I have this as a budget option. If I want to reduce the cost of nature spells in Druid, I'm playing Anacondra, and if I want to reduce the cost of nature spells in Shaman, I don't, because I'd rather play Cage Match Custodian and draw a weapon. This is a budget card because it's, again, good stats, it has a good effect, and if there's nothing else that you can put in the deck, this would be a good substitute for a more powerful card. Next, Mailbox Dancer. 2 mana, 3/2. Battle Cry, add a coin to your hand. Death Rattle, give 1 to your opponent. Now, you can kind of circumvent this if you play like an Evolve Shaman type of deck, but you'd rather play a better card, like a card that summons, if you've swung, like that kind of stuff that summons multiple token dominions. So this is filler. I don't want to spend a card getting a coin, but then it also gives my opponent a coin. I'm losing out on that deal. At least the shark keeps it kind of even. This doesn't. Next up, Pandaren Importer. 2 mana, 1/3. Battlecry. Discover a spell that didn't start in your deck. This is, as far as I can tell, a filler or budget card. Budget if you don't have a lot of spells. This may help you find something that you don't own that is powerful. Once you get to the competitive deck building, though, you're going to have the spells you want in your deck, and you'd want to discover more copies of those things. You play Runed Orbs to find more spells that you already play, like a 3rd Fireball, not a card you don't play, like a Flurry. So this most likely won't see play. The only thing I was going to say this could have been kind of spicy in is Rogue with the new Legendary, because it gives you a chance to discover any spell from a class, and you obviously don't play that class. But we have the Wand Thief, and that does a better job of discovering mage spells from outside the class than this would, and mage spells are probably what you want anyway, so it is filler. Next up, SI7 Skulker. 2 mana, 2/2 Stealth, Battlecry. The next card you draw costs 1 less. This card seems crazy to me. It's 1 mana or 1 stat off being properly statted 2-drop, but it's trading that for stealth. Oh, and also it's discounting your next card by 1. This card is nuts. Any mid-range deck, any aggro deck that could fit this in is going to do so. Obviously, the SI7 Quest is going to fit it in, but that's cheating because it has the name SI7 in it. This is a staple card. Be on the lookout for it. It will be haunting you soon. Next, we have Stockade's Prisoner. 2 mana, 5/4. Starts dormant. After you play 3 cards, pretend you're a hunter, and it awakens. Now, this card is absolute filler. It's a cool idea, but the only deck I could see that actually want to have increased stats like this is Hunter, and they have Imprisoned Felmaw, which just does this better because it wakes up and punches your opponent in the face, or kills a minion, and then you're sad. This one just summons itself and sits there. You can't swing with it. I don't think it's worth the investment. It's a filler card. Next up, we have Enthusiastic Banker. It's a 3 mana, 2/3. At the end of your turn, store a card from your deck. Death Rattle. Add restored cards to your hand. This, I think, also is a filler card. I wouldn't even recommend it for budget. If your opponent bounces this, or silences it, or transforms it, or anything, all the cards it stored are gone. It's not the worst card in the world, but it's something that, unless somebody finds a really good use for, playing an understated minion on 3 and then potentially not even getting an effect off of it does not seem worth it to me. Next, we have Entrapped Sorceress, a 3 mana, 3/4. Battlecry. If you control a quest, discover a spell. This is probably good. It might honestly be budget, but no, I think it's just okay. It's like a tech, maybe. Quest decks that want to discover a spell, you could just do that with Scorpid, and Scorpid's usually going to be better than this. This doesn't help you trigger anything else. It's definitely no 2 mana questing adventurer that drew you a card. It's okay. It's not the worst. It's like a nice, like I said, budget or tech card. That's really about it. Next up, Flightmaster Dungar. 3 mana 3/3, battle cry, choose a flight path and go dormant, awaken with a bonus when you complete it. We've already seen this in the meta. It's like a tech inclusion in a couple of control decks, but it's a good card overall, and that's pretty much it. Next we have Impatient Shopkeep, 3 mana 3/3, tradable with Rush. This is a good budget card. It has Rush, it has decent stats for 3 mana, you're really trading 1 stat for Rush, which is fine, and it's tradable. Refined decks are probably not going to be playing this, but if you're a budget player, absolutely pick this up, throw it in, it'll work for you. Next we have Nobleman, another 3 mana 2-drop as a 3 mana 2/3. Battlecry, create a golden copy of a random card in your hand. This seems like a filler card because targeting the one card you need is going to be incredibly difficult as it can target any random card in your hand. That being said, I love this card's art and flavor. It is hilarious. Because I just picture a nobleman looking down at me as a peasant and tossing me a little sack of gold, which is my golden minion. I just think it's hilarious. But other than that, competitively, this is not it. Next up, Northshire Farmer, 3 mana 3/3. Battlecry, choose a friendly beast. Boar. Shuffle 3 3/3 copies into your deck. It's kind of a filler. I mean, the only class that really wants to do this is Hunter, and we have Dire Frenzy, which buffs the minion on the board and shuffles 3 more. This is kind of a Dire Frenzy in the fact that it is also a 3/3 itself for 1 mana less, so you're playing 3 on the board, just not getting to use it immediately, and you're shuffling just 3/3 minions, not buffed minions. This is for the boar, and I think the boar is a meme. This is a meme too. Next we have Package Runner. It's a 3 mana 5/6, can only attack if you have at least 8 cards in your hand. This is, at best, a budget card. I think it will start off in handlock decks and then will quickly be cut when you realize you have to play cards to not die against aggro, and therefore you won't have 8 cards in your hand for your Package Runner. You will be dead. So it'll start off as a budget. If you don't have anything else to play, you can squeeze it in, and then I think it'll slowly make its way out of decks over time. Next, we have Rustrot Viper. 3 mana 3/4 tradable. Battlecry, destroy your opponent's weapon, and Acidic Swamp Ooze's feelings. This card is busted. It is a tech card that you feel okay including. This will see way more play than Ooze because if any decks in the meta that piss you off with weapons, this is going in. And if you don't run into those decks, you don't feel bad because you just shuffle them back and draw a card. Absolutely nuts. I won't say it's a staple because it is too meta dependent, but it's not a tech card either. It's just good. It's better than being a one-off tech. It's just a good card, good stats, and shuffle it away and destroys a weapon. You don't feel bad. I love tradable for that reason. Next up, we have Traveling Merchant, 3 mana 2/3, tradable. Battlecry, gain +1/+1 for each other friendly minion you control. I want to put this down as like a good / staple in Zoo, but I'm going to lean more towards just a good card side. Not something that you have to include, but something that you would definitely be interested in if you're flooding the board, maybe even in a Toka Druid style deck. You draw a bunch of acorns, get a bunch of guys, play him, he's big, no acorns, shuffle him back in, get something else, maybe make a better play this turn, but good card. Next, we have Two-Faced Investor. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of a card in your hand by 1, but there's a 50% chance that instead you'll increase it by 1, and it's a 3 mana 2/4. This is a filler card. Even as a budget player, don't take the risk of increasing the card in your hand by 1. It'll make you lose games, and you're going to feel as bad man, so just keep on walking. Next up, we have Cheesemonger, 4 mana 3/6. Whenever your opponent casts a spell, add a random spell with the same cost to your hand. The best thing about this card, aside from the stat line, is its name, and that's about it. We already had Ogre Magi, which was doing a phenomenal job on Standard Ladder. Whenever somebody played a spell, you would get a 2/2 with Taunt, and that card stopped seeing play. I don't think this would see play over it, especially because your opponent can kind of sort of have a feel for what they're giving you. And, you know, maybe you're an aggro mid-range deck, they play Twisting Nether, you get Twisting Nether, that's not helping you. And they know that, so, I mean, you know, you could high roll and maybe get a scenario reward, but it doesn't seem awful. It's like a budget card, budget replacement if you don't have the Ogremancer. I just don't see it seeing much play. Next we have Guild Trader, 4 mana 3/4, tradable, spell damage +2. This is another card that I would put as budget. It's not a bad card, but I would much rather be playing Elwyn and getting the 2 spell damage that is permanent than having a card that I trade and then sometimes have for some combo down the road. Next we have Royal Librarian, 4 mana 3/4, tradable, silence a minion. This card is just like the Viper. You want silence in the format? This is your guy. It's another good card. Tradable makes it a good tech. that you can get rid of whenever the hell you want, or play it as a 3 mana or 4 mana 3/4 that doesn't silence anything. But silence is good, especially with all these like buffs and mounts and tokens and all this kind of stuff running around. So I think he'll eventually find a home in the meta. It's just a good all around card. Next we have Spice Bread Baker, 4 mana 3/2. Battlecry, restore health to your hero equal to your hand size, which is going to be thick AF in your handlock deck. This is going to be a staple in those decks, probably even control. It may find a home there because you're just going to have a really big hand. You'll be able to heal yourself. And outside of that, it's just a good card. It's a 3 mana, 4 mana 3/2, which is 2 mana stats, the 2 you're using to heal yourself. If you find that you need some healing, this is the card for you. Definitely not bad, but just good. Next we have Stubborn Suspect, 4 mana 3/3 Death Rattle, summon a random 3-cost minion. This is a budget replacement if you're missing out on a couple Death Rattles for your Death Rattle Demon Hunter. I think they're better for us to be playing. I like the 4 mana 4/3 that summons a 4/3 better than this. You could get some really good 3-drops and some really 3-drops. So you'd rather have more control. Plus this would potentially summon demons or other beasts which interrupt your N'Zoth if you're playing N'Zoth. Next we have Battleground Battlemaster. 5 mana 5/5. Adjacent minions have Wind Fury. And it says Battleground, so I'm wondering if they're going to add it. Card seems pretty good. I would put it down as definitely good. I don't think it's necessarily a staple, but this could be coming soon to a zoo deck near you to punch you in the face a lot. Outside of that, not very playable. Just kind of like a zoo focus card, so it is good. Next we have Lion's Guard, a 5 mana 4/6 Battlecry. If you have 15 or less health, gain +2/+4 and taunt. This is a card I could see being included in the self-harm Warlock deck, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on that. I know I was at first. When I first read this, I was like, taunt, okay, 15 health, whatever. And then I remembered that we did have Hooked Reaver, which was similar, and Hooked Reaver put in some work. This guy can do the same. It's a little bit more mana than Hooked Reaver. I believe Hooked Reaver was a 4, but it is more stats with 10 health. So I think this will definitely help to keep your self-damaging Warlock alive with a just thick boy blocking the way. And I'm going to put it down as a good card. Next we have Stormwind Guard. It's a taunt for 5, 4/5. Battlecry, give adjacent minions +1/+1. This is to make our 6-drop rogue legendary a little sad when you play Jandis and you don't want to hit this. Not the worst, but not great either. I would not play this over the other 5-drop that gives Wind Fury, and for that reason I think this is a filler card. Then we have City Architect. It's a 6 mana 4/4 Battlecry, summon 2 0/5 Castle Walls with Taunt. At first I thought this was like a filler card, but the more I'm thinking about it, the 0/5 Castle Walls are pretty relevant. Having a 4/4 body is also not too bad. So I could definitely see including this in a couple of control decks that are trying to stay alive, and I'm going to give it like a good rating. For neutral, we have Cornelius Rome, the best Rome card. Alright, maybe not as good as the quest reward, but it's there. 6 mana 4/5 at the start and end of each player's turn. Draw a card. So this is a 4 mana 4/5 with a 2 mana draw 2 attached. This is a staple for sure. Any deck that you could find room to put this guy in, he is going in there. People used to play Nat Pagle for a 50% chance to draw a card at the end of your turn. This is a 100% chance to draw minimum 2. Control decks will want it when they have control of the board. Mid-range will have it when they're pushing pressure for refill. Aggro decks will want it as a top end for more cards. I can't see any deck that does not want this card. It seems absolutely nuts. I'm excited to play him for sure. Next we have Lady Prestor. Thank God she's free. 6 mana 6/7 Battlecry. Transform minions in your deck into random dragons, but they keep their original stats and cost. Looking at the dragons, there's really not too many misses. There's like 10 good hits, like 6 okay hits or something like that, and then like 3 like bad hits. That being said, this isn't consistent enough to build a deck around, and it's not consistently strong enough to outright win you the game. You're really looking for the dragon that adds more dragons, the dragon that adds spells. You're looking for Nyxia herself to fill the board, or like Malygos destroy spells. It's okay. I don't think I'd ever just throw this in a deck and be like, yeah, 6 mana 6/7. Now my minions are random. Maybe you can squeeze it into Spell Damage Mage to be cheeky, and you have like a 1 mana 1/2 that's dragon that does something crazy, like Alstrosses your opponent in the face, and then also has +2 spell damage, but like you could also just play a consistent deck. So this is fun for budget players. If you don't have anything else to run in, you just need a good 6-drop on curve. And she's free, so she is very budget friendly, but other than that, I would not be playing her. Next we have Moarg, Forge Fiend, 8 mana, 8/8 taunt, death rattle, gain 8 armor. This is a filler card. It's kind of maybe a budget card, but I don't know what deck you're playing that you're like, yeah, 8 drop. So it's good effect, good taunt. It is a demon, so it does open up Enzoth for other classes that maybe were missing that demon slot. And really, you want to just discover this off of Cenarian Ward and summon an 8/8 taunt that gives you another 8 armor. And outside of that, you won't be putting him into a deck, so I will put him as a filler. Then we have Varian, the King of Stormwind. 8 mana, 7/7. Battle Cry. Draw a rush minion to gain rush. Repeat for taunt and divine shield. This is a good card. He draws 3. He's a 7/7. He's a house. The only issue I have with him is outside of Paladin, I don't know what divine shield minion I'm trying to play. The mech 3/2 that gains rush after you corrupt it has fallen out of favor in even Rush Warrior, so I don't think I want to jam it back in there just to give him divine shield. So maybe you just play him in Taunt Warrior as a Taunt Rush, but then you would rather be playing Troublemaker. It's a good card for sure. He's definitely powerful, and we will see him in a deck, just maybe not every single deck, so I'm going to put it as a good card. Then finally, we have Goldshire Knoll. 10 mana, 5/4 rush, costs 1 less for each other card in your hand. This will find a home, obviously, in Handlock, and also could find a way to squeak into some budget control lists. I'm going to put this as a good card because I think it's better than just a budget choice, as it should be in a good deck, which is Handlock. Alright, that wraps up our review of all the cards in United in Stormwind. I am super excited for the set. It looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a lot of really, really cool quests and fun decks that I could build and play around with, even if it's not at a competitive level. And hopefully it should shake up this meta in a really fun and exciting way. Let me know what cards you guys think maybe I got wrong, or for your favorite cards down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and help us defeat the most powerful class of all, the YouTube algorithm. And as always, all the links to our other content will be in the description down below. And until next time, stay brawlic.